Many African Americans often ask the question, how come we no longer have national leaders like Dr. King and Malcolm X? But they're asking the wrong question. What they should be asking is who benefits most by the fact that we no longer have national leaders like Dr. King and Malcolm X? The answer is the white establishment does. Whenever an outcome happens among the oppressed that benefits the oppressors, it is an outcome that was manufactured by the oppressors. Those black people who do not critically think never notices their mental change. Critically think long and hard about the fact that we no longer have black leaders that have reached the pinnacle heights as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X had done so. Are we really expected to believe that there are no longer among our ranks of over 55 million African Americans, not even one single person, not one individual who possesses the ability and qualifications to stand upon a national platform and articulate our cause and struggle? Of course not. Many African Americans have been misled to believe that men like Malcolm X and Dr. King were rare black anomalies that no longer exist among our ranks. But this is totally untrue. But it's precisely what we're supposed to believe. Here's what's actually happening. The government has a historical incentive for not wanting to have another outspoken African American national leader reaching to the level of influence and prominence reached by Dr. King. They deemed it as being a threat to U.S. national interests. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and his top senior aide William Sullivan said that Dr. King had become too influential, therefore too powerful, and they labeled Dr. King as being the most dangerous Negro to the future of the nation. Dr. King was shortly thereafter assassinated. White oppressive forces realized then that it was by providing national media platforms to Dr. King and Malcolm X that their popularity and their followers grew. They therefore now prevents the rise of a new black messiah, as they call it, figure, by denying national media platform from those among us that have a potential of becoming a national black leader. And they provide it only to their black puppets, their puppet leaders. They're black puppet leaders who won't confront the system of white supremacy. This is because those puppets actually work in behalf of the white establishment, while merely giving the illusion that they're working in behalf of the black community. These black puppet leaders are literally like pool lifeguards that are not allowed to rescue drowning victims from the deepest end of the pool. They're only allowed to rescue victims in the shallow end of the pool. This is a metaphor for how black puppets can only protest when a black person has been killed by a police officer. But they're forbidden from protesting the system of white supremacy, as our true past black leaders had done so. This fact provides clarity to the words of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover when he said that the only way we'll have another black messiah national leader would be only if the government creates one. After stating that the unification of the American Negro is the greatest threat against the nation, Hoover issued the directive to prevent the rise of another black messiah figure who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. It's clear to see that they've succeeded at meeting that objective. Nowadays, the white establishment literally treats those black people with true revolutionary minds like a gardener treats weed within his garden. A gardener doesn't want weeds spreading throughout his garden, so he denies it of water and he denies it of fertilizer. Likewise, the white establishment doesn't want the ideology of true black consciousness spreading through their garden of white supremacy. So they now deny those people who speaks it a national media platform. This prevents it from spreading. Today, black leaders are selected and controlled by the white ruling class. They do so by controlling who they will allow to speak before a national platform within their media. If these black people don't cooperate, if they don't do the bidding of the white establishment, they won't be given any airtime within national media. The elites found that giving media attention to those black people who speaks truth to power works against the interests of the white establishment. In reality, there are still many black people among our ranks with the capability of Malcolm and Martin. However, these black people are no longer given any media attention because the white establishment don't want their ideology to spread among the black masses, thus disrupting their system of white supremacy. They falsely justify doing so by labeling the ideology of black liberation as being anti-white militant rhetoric. They claim that the ideology breeds hatred and dissent against the white society. They therefore treat the ideology of black liberation literally as if it were weeds within a garden. The true reason it's being done is to preserve the nation's white dominance and to prevent massive unified black protests as witnessed during the 1960s. They don't want it ever happening again. There's more. Have you ever noticed that on those televised black summit shows, they always place black rappers like T.I. and Killer Mike and many others that are underqualified to discuss the plight and condition of black America on their panels? It's actually a suppression tactic that prevents black liberation. White oppressive forces controls who sits upon these televised panel by only financing and sponsoring or televising shows with black speakers that they approve of. They even have a list of black people that are banned from being given a national media platform within the white controlled media. They then either invite or approve the invitation of black entertainers and self-loathing blacks like Candace Owens to speak on these televised panels and summits. This limits the spectrum of the dialogue to merely being opinions, but allows for a lively debate, but remaining within a low-level spectrum. It's how white oppressive forces ensure that black liberating dialogue remains dumbed down and non-productive. Black people, it's time to wake up to the fact that although most of us no longer experience the type of white racism the way our ancestors, our grandparents experienced it, we do, however, still experience white racism. When the past blatant white racist subjugation tactics deployed against us in the past became morally and socially unacceptable with the changing times and resulted in unprecedented unified black protests, white oppressive forces did not abandon the practice. They merely developed more stealthier ways for subjugating black people, more covert methods of maintaining their white dominance over black people that's more socially acceptable and better suited for the changing times. Unlike the blatant racist subjugation tactics of the past that black people could easily recognize and therefore develop counter strategies against, today's tactics are not easily recognized, nor are they easily comprehended by most of the black victims. White racism always works best when its black victims no longer easily recognizes how it works. The systems of white supremacy now strives and operate like a well-oiled machine. It has always worked best when its black victims no longer recognize how it's working. It's why our people must be educated before we can be liberated. Black people will never liberate ourselves using outdated foot march strategies against modern racist tactics. We must elevate our tactics to match the sophisticated tactics that are presently being deployed against us by white oppressive forces. To understand how white racism is currently deployed against the black population, it's necessary to learn the following terms: the socializing of the oppressed, the moralized divide and rule of the oppressed, manufactured consent to mistreat the oppressed, the miseducation of the oppressed to accept the oppressor's dominance, and the gaslighting of the oppressed. This is when they now label us as peddling victimhood. When we talk about racism, or they say we're playing a race card, when we're legitimately talking about real racism, It's also behind their declaration when they says all lives matters. Whenever we say that Black lives matters, all lives matters has never mattered to the white establishment. They're only saying it now because they're gaslighting us. They deploy many nefarious tactics to facilitate the ongoing subjugation of Black people. Those Black people who insist that we're now our worst enemies are the most clueless among us. I won't explain all of these tactics because the video would then be too long, but I will explain the tactic that's being deployed against us daily and unrelentingly. It's the demoralizing divide and rule of the oppressed. That's the tactic they use against us every day. It's no strange occurrence that many Black people are now self-hating, perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies, and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutal history of the contrary. These thoughts and this mindset among Black people that clearly benefits the white society was deliberately indoctrinated into the minds of millions of Black people without most of us even realizing it. The collective aggressions of the Black masses have been deliberately shifted away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It's actually a Black racially demoralizing divide and conquer psychological warfare time, also known as divide and rule, psychological warfare campaign. Demoralize, divide, and rule, or conquer, is the method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hatred and division between them. It is a well-proven tactic that's been used for a very long time by oppressors for controlling the oppressed. Because when the oppressed are kept demoralized, divided, and are made self-loathing, this condition makes them much more easier to control and subjugate. It also makes them much more compliant with their oppressor's dominance over their lives. Black people are the unknowing targets of the most elaborate, racially demoralizing divide and rule psychological warfare campaign in history. This system utilizes the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of Black people. The premise is that the more ashamed of ourselves and our culture that Black people are made to feel, the more self-hating, self-loathing, and more compliant with white dominance we become. This system is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the Black population without being challenged or counterbalanced by an equal amount of positive Black self-loving, racially affirming information. It conveys a subliminal message that Black people are now our own worst enemies and that we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that Black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. The ultimate goal is to demoralize the Black population to such an extent that we begin to doubt our own ability to govern over ourselves. And we believe that we therefore need white people to govern over our lives. Moreover, that we're better off living under white dominance, and therefore we abandon all hopes of ever liberating ourselves. It also creates Black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. This system is extremely effective because when Black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. Its weapon is the demoralizing message that it carries and the way that those negative messages adversely affect the Black population in terms of our behavior. With time, being unable to refute the constant negative, demoralizing, humiliating disinformation about ourselves, many Black people will become mentally fatigued for trying to resist it and will eventually accept it and internalize it. The fraudulent narratives is now accepted by many black people. The constant humiliation, it affects how we function, how we perceive each other, how we treat each other, causing us to become distrustful of each other, self-doubting, even hating ourselves and resenting our friends and families. It also shifts black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. Through the skillful, sustained use of repetitive media propaganda, white oppressive forces have created an elaborate prison for the minds of black people. It doesn't matter that the demoralizing information are untrue. Most black people will act upon the information because they've all been given the same disinformation. As long as the white society keeps black people within this collective condition, they can then rule over us forever. The basis of this concept of warfare works by affecting the subconscious mind of the black population through constant and unrelenting demoralizing propaganda. It works by tapping into the immense power that shame has upon the human mind. Those black people who do not critically think nor question the validity of all information they receive from white society, those who blindly accept what the white society says, are the ones that become mentally enslaved while never noticing their mental change. This is the truth of our condition. And this is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation of people towards an applied objective. Because perceptions created by the media leads to what's called non-deliberate thoughtful decisions making. It's also called thinking without thinking. Decisions made below the level of consciousness, called thinking without thinking, and ultimately leads to unconscious similar behaviors. This psychological warfare system provides the white ruling class with a more proficient method for controlling and subjugating black people. For unlike the past racist systems that are used against us, that black people were easily able to identify and therefore develop counter strategies against, these current systems are not easily recognized nor easily comprehended by many of its black victims. This psychological warfare program works, in fact, so well that it not only makes black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it makes black people prefer white dominance over our lives. It is at the root of the feelings of self-hatred, self-loathe, and self-contempt that black people have so often in our community. It's the reason why we are more divided than any previous time in history. The white society implemented this in response to 1960s Black Unified protests. Sadly, to our detriment, the oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves. Frantz Fanon said that. Throughout generations, our ancestors have always provided us with those they've given the spiritual insight to see through the oppressor's maze of lies and confusion. Those of us bestowed with this gift from the ancestors must teach. We must share our knowledge. Our ancestors demand this of us. Those who know must teach. African proverb. It's time to elevate your mind above a Willie Lynch myth and a biblical fairy tale and start seeing your reality. One love and peace.